Gary Myers, our friend, is joining us, and I had talked, Gary, about 10 minutes ago about Odell Beckham. And I said, listen, J.J. Watt and Odell Beckham may be great players, but of all the top 10 receiving targets in the NFL, his production doesn't elevate the Giants. They're only 13 and 11 when he has a touchdown, and the other top targets from Gronk to Travis Kelce to Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, A.J. Green, Julian Edelman have much higher winning percentages. So I guess my point is, in a salary cap league, how valuable is Odell Beckham to you?
Well, I heard you say that before, Colin, and I think you can, most of the time I agree with your insight, but you can really play with numbers any way you want and make them, do anything you want to prove your point. The reason that the Giants have the record that they have, as good as they have, even though it's not great, with Beckham scoring touchdowns, is because he's been their best player for 3 years. The record would be a lot worse if they didn't have him. So whereas he's not going to become the NFL's highest paid player, he will probably become the NFL's highest paid wide receiver when the Giants give him a new contract. And they probably would have been a 4-12 team the first 2 years without him. And then the defense was good enough last year that they probably would have won 8 or 9 games if they didn't have him. But the reason they even got to 11 wins last year was because of him. He is a great player. He's just he's been kind of a knucklehead off the field with some of the antics, but there's no denying he's a great player.
But when he has 100 yards or more, they have a losing record. 100 yards or less, they have a winning record. Could I make the argument that Dez Bryant has a little bit of this quality, that he is demanding? And you go into football games knowing you're going to have to make certain throws to him and certain targets, or he can be difficult in the sideline. He can be demanding. Is he a good teammate, in your opinion?
Well, the funny thing about that is that all the players say that he is, despite the antics on the sidelines. And the reason that so many of Eli's targets have gone to him is because he hasn't had anybody else to throw to. And last year he had Victor Cruz, who was, unfortunately just not the same player after a couple of really serious leg injuries.
Yeah.
And he had Sterling Shepard, who was a rookie who did well for a rookie. But, all three of those guys are under 6 feet. Now, with Brandon Marshall coming in and assuming he's got enough left, and then a rookie tight end, Evan Ingram, who's about 6'5", and Marshall 6'4", all of a sudden the Giants have some bigger targets. And Beckham's numbers might go down this year because Eli will have others to throw to. But think about it. Last year, there was nobody that the defense had a game plan for to stop other than Beckham. And for a guy who's 5'10", that's hard to do. I mean, for an offense to really be super productive when you only have one weapon and the guy's less than 6 feet tall. So, listen, I've been as critical of Beckham as anybody because he really does need to grow up. But the one thing you can't really criticize, other than that Green Bay playoff game in which he completely melted down, you can't criticize his production because he's really been the only offensive player on a team that does not have a good offensive line, hasn't been able to run the ball, and there's no other weapons. To use Julian Edelman's numbers or Gronk, well, yeah. I mean, the Patriots are the best team in the league, and they got the best quarterback of all time. So they're kind of going along for the ride. And those, I think it's been pretty much proven that you can plug anybody into that system, and as long as Brady is healthy, you can. All their numbers that you want to translate into wins and losses based on touchdowns is going to be good because the Patriots and Brady have been great.
Players, when they get well compensated, many it doesn't affect. Some it does. Mm-hmm. Is there a concern that you pay Beckham a king's ransom and he changes and he's more difficult?
Well, sure. I mean, listen, he's not hurting for money. He got a huge deal from Nike. He did not come from a background that all of a sudden he had money in his pocket for the first time in his life, and he couldn't wait to spend it. I mean, he comes from a real good family, really solid parents. But I think until you give a guy $50 million guaranteed, you don't know how he's going to react to it.
Right.
It didn't faze Eli, but it's brought others down. We saw, Darrelle Revis had made a ton of money before he even came back to the Jets, and then they gave him $39 million guaranteed. And now he had some injuries, but it just didn't look like he wanted to play anymore.
Yeah, totally agree.
But Beckham is only 24 years old, and he wants to be remembered as the greatest receiver in NFL history. So I don't think if they give him a lot of money at the end of this season, all of a sudden he's going to become satisfied. I mean, he is super competitive, and part of his problem is he doesn't know how to control his emotions because there's nobody on the team that hates to lose as much as he does. As the wall in Green Bay is perfect example of that.
New book out next month, My First Coach, Inspiring Stories of NFL Quarterbacks and Their Dads. Across the street, same stadium, the Jets are essentially tanking. They're stripping down their roster, and it's very obvious. They've got a roster, a collection full of mediocre quarterbacks who some would debate aren't really NFL quarterbacks. I mean, you covered initially primarily the Giants, but you know both franchises. Are they just tanking for Darnold? Is that what they're doing?
Well, they'll just tell you they're playing young players and developing young players. I don't think it's the worst thing to do.
Right.
Right. Now, whether it's Darnold and I just want to make you aware, or if you're not already, that I don't think that Darnold, even if he comes out as a lock to be the first pick, I've had people who really, really know quarterbacks well, who have watched tape, who tell me that, Josh Allen from Wyoming throws the ball much better, gets the ball into those tight windows that you have to in the NFL. It's just that he's played at a lower level of competition. That Darnold's only started like 10 or 11 games, whatever that might be.
Yeah,
there's lots going to happen between now and next April. And based on what this guy told me, who I really trust, I would not be surprised at all if Darnold is not the first quarterback taken. But I think that what the Jets' plan is to get the first overall pick in the draft, and then at the end of the evaluation process, take the best quarterback, whoever that might be. With one slight asterisk, Colin, they have not totally written off Christian Hackenberg. I mean, the guy hasn't even gotten to but Colin, he hasn't even gotten into a game yet.
His completion percentage was bad in college.
Of course, but but nothing has really changed since they drafted him, other than practice, and he didn't look good in a preseason game against the Eagles. But you got to at least get him on the field to find out, which is why I think he should be the starter rather than Josh McCown at the start of the season. And what are the Jets going to gain by starting a 38-year-old quarterback who's been with about 15 teams already, whose starting record is 18-42, including 2-20 over the last 3 years? I mean, what's going to really happen? I mean, the best they're going to be is like 1-4 or 1-5 before they switch to Hackenberg. I feel like just start the kids at the beginning of the season before they suffer a lot of injuries, before the locker room is demoralized at 0-5 or wherever it might be, and let's see what he's got. And then if you become convinced that he stinks, like a lot of us think that he does, then, okay, you're all in on taking the best quarterback next year. But, Colin, they invested a second-round pick in this guy.
They're
you got to at least get him on the field.